Let's see what's out there.
Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There, an entertainment video stream and podcast focused on film, television and related media. My name's Keith Isles. I'm an independent filmmaker and lifelong enthusiast on anything movies and television, and very much a Star Trek fan. And in today's episode, we are going to indeed have a spoiler-filled conversation around 765874 Unification, which is it's licensed by Paramount, but essentially it's a really, really well-made fan film. It does a lot of things, really. It's done to sort of commemorate, the late Leonard Nimoy, and it's approved by his widow, etc. But it's also sort of there to celebrate William Shatner and really put a nice bookend, I suppose, to the Kirk-Spock relationship. So this is a lot of things. There's a lot to unpack here, but we're going to do that. But obviously, this is about, two good friends separated by time and space. So in this case, I've got a friend that's separated by a time difference and the Atlantic Ocean. So it's great to welcome back my good friend, Pete Mealy.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, all right. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to see you again.
I know. We haven't done one of these in a while. I do feel a little rusty with it all, to be perfectly honest. But
same, yeah.
Yes. If anybody's new to this, welcome. As I said, we put these out on occasion. It used to be a regular thing. We've covered a lot of different film and TV properties, and in the Star Trek side of things, I mean, this is where it all began. Hence the title of this, really. The Let's See What's Out There. We did way back when Picard season 1 first started streaming, and we've done various things. We've covered some Discovery and some Strange New Worlds and all sorts of stuff. But we're both Star Trek fans. We both have, I guess, opinions on the various types of Star Trek that's out there. But I wanted to have a little chat and thought it would be really good to do about this. And, this was something that, this dropped, it's probably kind of old news now because it dropped nearly 2 weeks ago, I think. And it sort of set the internet ablaze. The day it came out, I actually got sort of with about 5 minutes notice invited on a live stream that the rabbi from another world was doing. And we kind of went through I'd only watched it once at that point, and we kind of went through it and, tried to sort of understand what it was trying to say, point out references and all of that sort of thing. And to be honest, the people he had in the live chat, I think, knew a lot more about it than I did, to be perfectly honest. But with the time, I've been able to go off and do some research, and I've watched it a few more times. But, we always talk about these things for our love of the characters and the storytelling. But also, one of the reasons I'm a filmmaker and an actor is because, I've obviously got the love of the production side as well and the making of these things. So I've been able to go off and do a little bit of research on that, and got some information on that. So we'll cover today. We'll talk about this in some detail, I'm sure, but we'll also talk about what it's trying to say, what it actually means, how it was produced. Obviously, there's still a lot more questions and whatever, but also where it might be leading, and what this might mean for the future and all of that sort of stuff. So anyway, I've waffled enough. My first question to you, Pete, is what did you think of this when you saw it?
So I missed it, right? I think you sent it to me, and that's the first I'd ever heard of it.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I watched it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And, picked up a lot of little things in it, just watching the first time through. Watched it a couple more times, started maybe piecing some other stuff together. Went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, saw some of the other films in the, what is it? Whatever the numbers are. Oh,
Yeah.
765874, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that is. And, I will say, I think the part that I watched the hardest the first time out was the credits,
Mhm.
because there are a lot of credits on this,
Yes.
short film.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to watch all the credits and see just everyone who's connected to this, right?
Yes.
So it is a Roddenberry entertainment work,
Yeah.
right? So it's being managed by Roddenberry, Gene's
Yeah.
son, and so it's official, right?
Mhm.
It also is connected, I think, to Marvel in some way, because Kevin Feige is a special thanks, and
Yeah, you got a thanks in there, which
yeah.
not sure his connection, but yes, I did notice that as well.
Well, so I did see one thing about that, which is that the production company or whatever, the OTO, I don't know how to say it, right?
I think it's Otoy, but I don't know
Otoy,
that's
right?
exactly how it's pronounced. But yes,
Whatever
Otoy.
it is.
Yeah.
They have done work on Marvel films.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then so sorry, I've now totally lost track, I think. But you asked me what my thoughts were, so I'm going to go back to that question quick, which was that it seemed like a very heartfelt message, but maybe not super story driven, right? I I don't know, right? Like it's got references to generations in there, and I guess, yeah, references to lots of other things as well.
Yeah.
But it seems to start from a generation's place, and one of the other 765874 films also carries that on. And so I think my thought was, well, this is kind of nice. I'm not sure what it means in terms of big picture. Um, and my hope would be that it is just sort of more fluff than uh, a firm signal of direction. Because in terms of actual, like, canon or storyline or carrying on the franchise, the methods and like style of making this, uh, I don't enjoy. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, a lot of things there. I mean, yeah. Otoy. They seem to, they're part of the Roddenberry archive, so it's all about preservation of Gene Roddenberry's work and Star Trek as a whole. The Okudas, Mike and Denise Okuda, are involved in that archive as well, in that preservation of those designs and the world that Star Trek created. And yes, they've done over the last couple of years, they've done a few of these short films that all sort of interconnect in some way, which is great. They also, this has been obviously William Shatner, he's in his 90s now, bless him. I think this is a way of kind of honoring him and his work and what he's done with the character of Kirk over the 60 years of Star Trek,
Yeah.
or maybe 60 years. And obviously there's been mixed feelings about his ending, or the ending of his character in Star Trek Generations. And some people have loved it, other people have not been so happy about that. Also, we didn't really, because sadly Leonard Nimoy passed between the Kelvin films.
Yeah.
What happened was, when we got Star Trek Beyond, we had that bit where Prime Spock, as he was, had passed, and the Kelvin timeline Spock got informed of this. So we never really got, other than that, which they handled very well, I think, in that film, but we never really got an end, and we never really got the two characters together again. So this has been very much for the fans, I think, to reunite those characters, whether it's reunited them in the afterlife, or whether this means something else. We can certainly unpack. I think there are I know the creatives have said that a lot of it is open to interpretation, and we've all got our head canon of things and whatever when it comes to this. So that is interesting. So, but it's also joined a lot of other things up. What it's done that's very clever is not only does it make references to various other things, and without dialogue, or with one voiceover, which is obviously from one of the films as well. It also connects some of the other media together. There are things from comic books and novels that are included within this sort of narrative. It also joins new Trek into it, because we get a character that we first saw in Discovery that's in this, that obviously joins the Prime Star Trek universe with the Kelvin timeline universe. So it sort of pulls everything together in a way, that sort of way to sort of make everything canon, if you like. So I thought it handled that quite well. But there were a lot of questions watching it. There were questions about what it is, what it's saying, what it means, and how it was done. I mean, there were loads of questions when I first saw it about how it's done. Was this deep fake? Was this de-aging? Was this CG? What was it exactly? And it turns out it's a little bit of an amalgamation of several things, which I'm sure we'll get into. It's also great that this is authorized. William Shatner himself is a producer of this, along with Leonard Nimoy's widow, along with Rod Roddenberry. So, and it's licensed with Paramount, etc. So it's ticking a lot of those boxes as well. But I think I'll save my final comment till we get to the end of of this whole discussion. But I've got a fairly bold comment that I think about it. But as I said, I'll save that to the end. But I do like the fact that it's connecting a lot of things together. And I think that it's respecting not only the actors, but it's also respecting the characters, and it's respecting the fans. It's doing there's a lot going on here in 7 minutes of film. And I think it does it well. Yeah. Have you frozen, Pete, or have I just gone on that long? Oh, I think you might have frozen. Pete, are you still there? Oh dear. Well, I think Pete might be having a technical issue. Either that or I am and not realizing it. But hold on, Pete's dropped out for a second. He'll be back in a minute, I'm sure. So, but yes, lot to unpack here, a lot of things to discuss. Obviously, this is a recording rather than a live stream today, so we won't get comments as such. But if you do have any comments when you watch this, please do put it down in the comment section, and we'll make every effort to respond to that. And also, if you want us to do a follow-up or whatever, we can do so as well. But Pete's back. Here we go. It is as if we're live. Hold on a second. Hello.
I am so sorry. My computer just crashed.
That's all right. I just wondered whether I bored you to tears with my long depacking of that.
I had to pop in on the cell phone here, so I apologize.
That's right.
It's so strange. The other stream might pop up at any point. We'll just have to watch that I don't show up in stereo.
No, it's all right. I've ended the other one, so you're good.
The last thing I heard you say was your bold comment.
Oh,
That
yes,
you're
yeah.
saving a bold comment, but then what was next? Sorry.
Yeah, just that really. I was going to save it to the end of this discussion because, as I said, we got a lot to unpack and talk about. I don't know what's the best way to. I mean, obviously, we normally have a format with this with these streams that we do. I decided to abandon the actual structure of that for this, so it doesn't hamper us too much. But you know, in the fashion of that, I have gone to grab a couple of our Make It So production slides, if you like, just to talk about a few of the creatives involved in this. Obviously, we've mentioned some of the producers, but there's also, you know, this is directed by Carlos Baena. I think that's how that's pronounced. Who you know is a Spanish filmmaker. He's done quite a lot of short films, but he's also worked with Lucasfilm and Pixar animation studios, etc. So he was our director for this. But writing wise, we've got James Urbach, who works very much in the computer graphics streaming, 3D rendering you know, line of business, and he is obviously the CEO and founder of Otoy, which is the software company that's produced this. So, and he is, from interviews I've read and seen, a lifelong Star Trek fan, and I kind of think that shows when you look at this work and the quality of this. So that's good. We've got David Blass as a production designer on this. David, I think we've talked about him before on this podcast. He worked on Star Trek Picard season 3, which we covered. So he did the production design on that, but has obviously worked on a lot of other shows as well over the years. And then, of course, composing wise, we've got Michael Giacchino, who I love. He did, obviously, he's no stranger to Star Trek because he did the music for the Kelvin verse film. So he did Star Trek 2009 and Into Darkness and Star Trek Beyond. And they brought him in, and he does a very moving score here on this one. So so that was cool to see. And then on the sort of, again, I'm only crediting a few people here. There are a lot more involved, but you know, we've got Sam Witwer, who's an interesting guy. You know, Sam's been sort of working as an actor for the last 20 years in the sort of sci-fi realm, mainly. I remember first seeing him in one of the seasons of Smallville, and he played Racetrack in Battlestar Galactica. And he's been the voice of Darth Maul on the various Star Wars animated shows, as well as providing the voice in Rogue One as well. So he's done a lot of that, and he's done a lot of voice work over the years. But yeah, he's got quite an enviable career actually, because you know, he is a big Star Trek fan himself. And there was an interview on Trek Culture with him, Sean Ferrick and those guys. There was a really good interview podcast with him, and he goes into a lot of detail and information about the process here, and I learned a lot from that. So you know, great work, Sam Witwer, who's basically Kirk in this short, as well as being a producer on it. And then we've got Robin Curtis returning as Savick. Obviously, Robin Curtis played Savick in Star Trek 3 and 4, taken over from Kirstie Alley at the time. But she came back to reprise Savick's role, obviously aged up and whatever for the role as well. But it was good to see her back and sort of her to get a bit of a final arc for her character as well. We also got Gary Lockwood returning as Gary Mitchell from the original Where No Man Has Gone Before, the second pilot. He's returned to obviously be de-aged to replay that role. But again, good, Gary Lockwood, 2001, all of that stuff. So, a very famous actor there. And then in the role of Colt, which we will talk about that character in a bit more detail, I'm sure, but we have Mahi Thesa, who did that role for this, and she has been involved in the other short films from the Roddenberry archive as well. So I thought I'd mention a few of the production credits there. You're muted, Pete. You're still muted. You can tell we haven't done it for a while, right?
Just everything that can go wrong is going wrong.
That's all right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry. I was saying that do you think they actually had Gary Lockwood come in, or did they just use his footage and credit him?
Well, okay. So here's the other thing. Brings me to another slide, actually. So I implore anyone that's interested in this, check out the OTOY website. Lots of stuff from the Roddenberry archive on this. This slide probably doesn't really do it justice, and it's probably hard to see in this resolution and whatever. But they've recreated a number of things, and I think from looking at some of the behind the scenes stuff, Gary Lockwood did actually get involved in the production rather than just using reference photography on that. So yeah, that's quite interesting. But as you can see from that, there's not only pictures from the shorts that we've seen, but there's also, they've recreated some stuff from Star Trek The Motion Picture in some of those pictures there. They've even recreated one of the animated characters from the Star Trek animated series in a sort of, photorealistic form. So they've done all sorts of things, and it really is quite interesting. So yeah, check that out for sure.
Who was the animated character?
Is it called Arix? It's it was the Helms, or the navigator in the animated series, the 3-armed creature. Is it Arix? I think it's the name of the character. So yes, they've managed to sort of do a photorealistic version of him. It's somewhere on that, in that sort of collage of photos there, but I can't really. It's sort of in the middle.
I missed him watching it. I'll have to go back again.
Yeah. Fair enough. So I guess before we sort of talk about the wizardry or whatever of how they actually produce this, let's talk about the actual thing itself. And we usually have a section called Tea Earl Grey Hot, which is our way of trying to sort of look at some of the references and Easter eggs and whatever. But the first question, I guess, is why is this series named what it is, and how does that tie in? And it turns out that it does tie in all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to the Cage, and this character of Yeoman Colt, which was a character that was in the Cage originally. Her name escapes me, who originally played her. I might have to look that up in a minute, but yeah, she was a character in the Cage under the command of Captain Pike, Christopher Pike, in the Cage. But she's also, and that's where this number is referenced, she's been a character in the extended media. Apparently there was a Marvel comic some years ago which featured this character, and she, it turns out, is somehow connected. I don't know whether she's some sort of traveler, interdimensional traveler or what, but she was in the Marvel comic Early Voyages, and as I said, it's the character of Yeoman Colt. Laurel Goodwin was who played the original Yeoman Colt in The Cage. Sorry, I couldn't remember who that was. But yes, so her character, and that number is actually her Starfleet reference number.
Oh.
So it turns out that these films are kind of, in some respects, centered around her. She has a mind meld with Spock at some point, and I believe is involved in the V'Ger incident in Star Trek The Motion Picture. Again, all of this in sort of beta canon expanded universe stuff. But as I said, they've recreated her for this, played by, as I said, the actress that we mentioned, that looks, that bears a striking resemblance. But here's something that I am going to blow my own trumpet a bit here, Pete. I don't know whether you want to cast your mind back to when we were covering Picard season 3, but at the time when they went into the Daystrom station, one of the Easter eggs was Kirk's remains on the computer screen.
I remember
Meridian 3, and I said at the time, I wonder if this is a way of they're going to try and bring Kirk back and bring him back into the canon and whatever, using something here. Well, it turns out that that's kind of one of the mechanisms that they've used in this film, because we see Yeoman Colt at the Daystrom station there, looking at the very same graphics of Kirk's remains. So there you go. I was like, oh, when I saw that, I was like, I'm quite pleased that's coming to fruition.
Nice.
And sorry, any thought? I realize I'm talking a lot. Any thoughts about any of that?
I did not pick up the Yeoman Colt reference. Right. I knew I should have recognized who that lady was. But I couldn't quite place her. Now I thank you for that. And I love that you were right all the way back then about Kirk's remains.
I was just like, I wonder if that's a way they're going to use to sort of bring it back, and they sort of loosely have here, right? So yeah. Depends how you interpret it, I guess. But yes.
Yeah, and I think it goes to my point earlier, and possibly your big point is like this. It feels like they might be trying to set something up with these films and launch a new branch of the Star Trek franchise, which
what was it? Spock said there are always possibilities. Again, they use that final log from Kirk in Star Trek 2 at the end of this. It's the only bit of dialogue in it. Yeah, but they also start with the quote that he makes to Savick about how we deal with life is not as important as how we deal with death, wouldn't you say? That sort of thing, which I thought was quite nice to start it on. And then of course we get Gary Mitchell, who, as we know, was left as a sort of godlike being, as well as being one of Kirk's best friends at the end of that. And I don't know whether it's him that communicates with Colt in this. I was just kind of, again, trying to join the dots. There's a lot of sort of quick cut flashes from some of the previous films. I think they did one called Regeneration, didn't they? Where that's where Spock goes and picks up the pin badge.
Picks up the pin.
Picard had put on the grave. And again, they kind of use 3 versions of Spock in that. They've got the motion picture era Spock, and then the sort of Generations era, the next gen version of Spock, and then obviously in this one we've got the sort of Kelvin timeline older Spock. So yeah, it's quite interesting how they did that. But yeah, so obviously there's a little reference there. So we see that mountaintop where Kirk was buried by Picard, and he left the badge there that Spock collects in that previous film, and obviously plays a part in this film. So yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on this bit, or the opening of it, and how we sort of get from Gary Mitchell to this point?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting sort of like setting the stage, right? It made me think that they were in the Nexus, right? And so I don't know. I was one of the people who never had a problem with Kirk's finish in in Generations, and so I still sort of like the idea of the Nexus as a place, and so sort of setting this in the Nexus made sense to me, right? Then with Gary Mitchell in there, it's like, well, that might not be exactly what's going on. I don't know. I think it's fine. I'm trying not to read too much into this because it does, like, yeah, it felt, first off, like the first thing I did was check and see if William Shatner had died and I'd missed it, right?
Yeah. Yes. He's still very much here.
Because it does sort of play like an in memoriam thing, right? Like a fan in memoriam meme type thing of like, okay, now they're together again. But I don't know. It's moving. It's nice. I don't mind it.
Yeah. Well, we talked about when I spoke to the rabbi about it. The literally instant reaction. We were talking about the afterlife and whether it had the sort of Richard Matheson "What Dreams May Come" essence about it, but there's also a little bit of 2001, and there's just all sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, this very much looks like the Nexus sort of area that Kirk was staying in when he was in the Nexus. I always think about because a lot of people don't like. I've never had a problem with Generations either, but it was just not how people expected Kirk to meet his demise. You thought he would meet his demise on the bridge of Starship, not underneath a literal bridge. But I always did like, and I particularly liked the way he acted it, where he said, did we make a difference? And Picard says yes, and he goes, it was fun, and then he goes, oh my, yeah, before he goes, and it just wonders whether this then it leads to this moment potentially, you know, oh my, and he sees this crowd of people. Again, I'm not sure, because it's interesting. You read the credits, there is a character called Crusher, and it's played by an actor called John Del Toro, which apparently is the gentleman that's wearing the Starfleet Admiral's uniform at the front of this crowd of people. Hold on, if I sort of just go full screen with this. So two Shatners, or two Kirks, should I say, right there in the frame. There's a gentleman in a next gen era Star Trek dress uniform.
The white one.
Yes. And that character is called Crusher. Now, I have no idea. I mean, obviously, we know that I nearly said Will Crusher. Wesley Crusher is a traveler, right? We know that he's a sort of one of the travelers through time and space. And I don't know. I don't know what I didn't, and obviously we've got Savick in amongst this group of people, but if because I do sort of question if it was the afterlife, I would have thought Bones would have been, as well as Spock, but Bones would have been one of the people that Kirk would see and would be there. But they're not. He's not, and we've got this sort of random group of people until we get to Savick. And again, this is where they've linked another part of beta canon to the continuity here, and that is, there'd been rumors for years that the reason that Savick, as played by Robin Curtis, stayed on Vulcan in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home was because she was pregnant with Spock's son from the Pon Farr incident on the Genesis planet in Star Trek III. And there's a novel called Vulcan's Heart that kind of confirms that theory, and that she had a son in it. And the gentleman stood, just behind her left shoulder in that picture, actor called Mark Chinnery, plays Sorak, and apparently that was the name of the character from that Star Trek novel. So again, have they made that canon now that Savick had an offspring with Spock, and there they are. And definitely the look that Kirk gives her, and the raised eyebrow and the pursed lips and all of that sort of thing did sort of suggest the recognition. So,
and the nod that he gives to Kirk.
Yes, exactly. So I don't know. What did you think of that bit? I'm trying to go through it bit by bit here.
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, to be honest, it took me a minute to place Savick, right? And so my initial thought was that was Spock's mom and dad, right? But then I noticed the Vulcan ears.
Yes.
And it took me a little longer than maybe it should have.
Yeah.
To place her.
You thought it was Amanda and Sarek initially, yeah, and then realized, hold on, that's Robin Curtis, and
I thought it was Amanda and
Savick. Yeah.
But and then I will also be honest, like with the title Unification, I kept looking for ties to the Next Generation Romulan Unification.
Yes. Yeah, because of course we've had that title before, haven't we? So that would be that would be understandable.
And so that was one thing that I kept looking for. It did seem to be a welcoming, right? And so I think having it be Savick and that is really, it just sort of plays into the warm fuzzy feeling, right, that they're trying to foster here.
Yes.
With the transition or whatever it is.
Yes.
Can we talk about I assumed it was a Riemann, but tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, this is okay. So before you and I gave up on Discovery, we did cover some of season 3, I think it was, and obviously David Cronenberg was playing a character called Kovich in that.
Yeah.
And there was a episode where this character, who I believe is called Ensign Yor, appears in that and is described as a multi-dimensional traveler from another universe. And this is like the connection to the Kelvin universe. So it's almost like, for some reason, Savick found this guy to actually, so we've had Kirk brought back to life, but then he now needs to go into the Kelvin universe because that's where Spock is, right? And Spock has been in that, for those years. So this guy, I guess, is not only an interdimensional or a traveler between universes, but also through time as well, I guess, because we've obviously got the Generations Kirk here, but he's going to step into the Kelvin universe at the, which would be sort of earlier in the timeline, right? From that universe's perspective. Yeah. It's kind of timey-wimey, brain headache stuff. But
No, I've gone all cross-eyed. Yeah.
Exactly. But he obviously hands, so Spock, I guess Kirk's badge that he picked up from Viridian 3, which is obviously before he went into the other timeline, years before that. He must have, when he married Savick, I guess did he give her the badge and then she's given it to Yor in order for him to connect Kirk and transport Kirk to the Kelvin timeline? I don't know. Again, this is all up to interpretation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and then it goes to this, which is very interesting. So we've literally got the three Kirks. We've got the original series, the Wrath of Khan era, and then the Generations Kirk. So basically it's Kirk separated between, there's like sort of 15 years between each version, roughly. So, and again, amazing how we'll go on to the production and how they did this, but amazing how they recreated those looks. Absolutely uncanny, really.
Yeah. I saw the behind the scenes photos of Sam Witwer in the Generations uniform.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, they like nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got, and as I said, they did a similar thing in the film beforehand. You had sort of, you've had sort of the three Spocks, which must give credit to Lawrence Selleck is the person who's played Spock in these films, with a mixture of prosthetics and CG, which, as I said, we'll get into that. But we sort of had Spock in that from the motion picture and from Generations, and then obviously in this one we've got him from the Kelvin older Spock, and then we've obviously got the three Kirks here. And it would have been it would have probably been too much if he'd glanced across and then we had Chris Pine stood there as well. But to really signify we're going into another universe. But
or who's the actor who did it in Strange New Worlds?
Paul Wesley.
Paul Wesley.
Yes. Yeah. So this was very cool, I thought.
Yeah. I is that the, oh no, sorry. I was gonna say about Spock, right? Something you just said about it being Kelvin timeline. Mm-hmm. I assume that the room that we find Spock on was in Vulcan.
New Vulcan.
Oh, it's New Vulcan for sure?
Well, I don't know. I don't think anything from this is for sure. Right. But obviously, because Vulcan would have been destroyed in the Kelvin timeline prior to, Spock reaching the age where he was going to die. But they did set up a colony on New Vulcan. So I'm assuming that the planet that Kirk ends up on after making this, as I said, journey through time and across universes from death through time and across universes. So it's like, really real mind-bending stuff. But I'm assuming that is actually New Vulcan that he's on. And there are, again, I'll go on to the next slide. There are a couple of clues and references here. So first of all, on the table that Kirk passes on the way to Spock, we've got the IDIC for one thing, which has obviously been a staple there. But the box that's on the table is the same box that is sent to Kelvin Timeline young Spock, Quinto Spock, which had the photograph, which was actually from Star Trek V, the photograph of the seven of the crew on the bridge. And that's the same box there on the table. So again, that connects that dot, which is quite cool. Something I didn't spot this, but I read this somewhere, is there's a shot, and I don't know whether it's actually in this film or in one of the other films, but there's a shot of Yeoman Colt with the box, which is I've got sort of there in the top right of that frame. But what is interesting about that is she is wearing the Kelvin Timeline uniform. So does that mean that Colt that's the Kelvin Timeline version of Colt?
Yeah.
And if so, was there a message that got to her or something? I don't know, but there's that. But then the other thing that immediately made me think, oh, there's a connection, is when Kirk and Spock clasp hands.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that bit post V'Ger in Star Trek the Motion Picture, very much so. That's another little connection.
I also, I think some of these shots reminded me a lot of Star Trek the Motion Picture, and maybe we should talk about this in the production side, right? But in terms of like some of the shots did seem to be like reveling in the beauty of it versus the story of it, which was very much how I felt about motion picture, right? Like all those shots of the Enterprise early on is them sort of, I think, enjoying their capability more so than forwarding the story. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting observation, I think, which I wouldn't disagree with. I mean, I've got to ask you, bearing in mind this is two younger actors playing these characters that are, as I said, made by various methods to look like those actors. But how moved were you by this moment?
I mean, I would say I felt it, right? I think that the first feeling I had was absolute confusion, right? Because I will say, like I said, right? Like I was like, did Shatner die? And I did not know, right? Because they are hitting these notes so hard that I thought he has to be dead in real life, right? And I just didn't hear about it, which I felt would be crazy, right? And so the first time I watched it, just absolute confusion. Now that like watching it again, I am impressed that they hit it so hard.
Yes.
Right, to make me question reality. But then, there is sort of like a dissonant resonance frequency in there where I'm like, why exactly are they doing this at this point? And I think part of that is because I liked Kirk's send-off, and this doesn't and it feels late for this to be a Spock send-off.
Yeah, I think, okay, so I think there's a number of reasons, just to unpack what you said there. I think one of the reasons it was released is because it is literally the 30th anniversary of Star Trek Generations. Okay, it was released on the week of it being the 30th anniversary, which is frightening in itself, of Star Trek Generations. Right? So it was partly that. The other thing is, they did want to honor Leonard Nimoy, which obviously this is dedicated to. Yeah. But this process, and this actually is probably quite a good segue into how this was done, or bits of how it was done. This process has taken years to get to this stage in terms of the technology and the ability to do it and make it look this good. I mean, we've had de-aged characters, digitally recreated characters, performance capture. We've had, you know, all sorts of things over the years, over different movies and whatever, and to various degrees of success, I would say. Yeah. And especially in sci-fi and you know, big sci-fi properties and franchises and whatever. This, though, having listened to the so Sam Witwer did a really, as I said, I you know, I'm giving a shout out to Trek Culture, which is obviously a massive channel, a massive podcast, much bigger than humble old you and I. But they managed to get an interview with Sam Witwer, and that was very interesting because he talked a lot about the making of this and how this went about, and really I think based on what he said, I can see why it's successful. So essentially this is a combination. So first of all, my first question, you know, when I first started watching this was, oh, did Shatner do this and they de-aged him? And the answer to that is no. Shatner was not, even though Shatner's an executive producer and signed off on this and was involved in terms of, you know, recommendations and creative consultancy and all of that sort of thing, he wasn't on set playing Kirk. Okay, that was Sam Witwer. And just like, as I said, the actor playing Spock was
Mark Lawrence.
Lawrence Selleck. Lawrence Selleck. Yeah. So that was that. But apparently, so the process here is they do some of it with traditional prosthetic makeup. So they've got the costumes. They felt that Sam Witwer, you know, had the sort of physical build and sort of movement and whatever that he could give to it, and they had obviously real costumes, real locations, and he was wearing prosthetics, but those prosthetics were enhanced with what they called digital prosthetics, which is a real-time CG element that maps itself onto the face of the actor and captures the performance through that, but also making it look, you know, photorealistic like the actor. And I think with a lot of CG, often the problem is in the eyes, you know, and things of that nature. Now Sam Witwer was very firm about the fact that it's an actor involved process. So if something's just CG, sometimes it you know, it lacks the soul, it lacks the performance and whatever. And there's a lot of performance that goes into this. So Witwer's a big fan of Shatner, and he sort of studied him, and you know, knows the films very well, has listened to his audio novels, all sorts of stuff. So sort of knows the mannerisms and all of that. And he said that what he had to do was, with this digital prosthetics, and the other was he had to sort of contort his face, his features, to work like Shatner in certain moments. And I think, you know, he's got that sort of thing where he does the purse of the lips, and the warmth around the eyes, and all of that sort of thing. I think he gets,
and the head movement, right?
The head movement, the way he walks. He was saying that, you know, Shatner always walks with intent. There's a swagger to Kirk. And that's what we. I mean, you know, it's one of my childhood heroes. Love him. Yeah. There's a swagger to Shatner. And, you know, he worked really hard on perfecting that and getting that absolutely right. And I think he's nailed it. I mean, you 100%. Know, photorealistic belief that was Generations era William Shatner.
Totally agree.
You know, 100%. Likewise with the actor playing Spock, you know, we get the raised eyebrow in that scene, and you know, with a combination of the makeup and the digital effect and everything makes it work. And then, of course, Giacchino's music over the top of this makes this incredibly moving. And, you know, there are, the internet is covered with, you know, grown men that admit it brought them to tears, you know, you know, with this scene. And yeah, I think it was fantastic. But that's basically how it was achieved. So you had, obviously, Robin Curtis was really there, and they aged her up and gave her the Vulcan makeup and all of this sort of thing. But as I said, Sam Witwer was, you know, it was this, what they call digital prosthetics, which is, as I said, another method of attempting this, which involves performance, it involves a CG element, it involves a traditional prosthetic element, and it's kind of the combination of those things, of course, with excellent production design and costumes and all of that stuff. It's amazing. But it was really interesting to hear Sam talk about, you know, the acting thing, because obviously, you know, someone who's acted myself, often, you know, especially when you're working on something without a big budget or whatever, the actor's performance is not really considered. It becomes a very technical thing, and you know, you get line reads and all those sort of awful things sometimes. And you know, Sam Witwer said that he was adamant from the start when he was approached by this, was it was only going to work if the technology was the tool, but he as an actor brought acting to it, and he 100% had to bring acting and performance to this, along with all the mastery of the technology and all of that sort of stuff. So so it's a very interesting interview, and obviously learned a lot about this, because I had loads of questions about the production of it for obvious reasons. Also, apparently, the reason there is no, because we've seen in recent years as well that you can sort of de-age or recreate with dialogue now. You know, they've done it on the Star Wars shows with Mark Hamill and the late James Earl Jones. You know, they created those voices, and apparently there was a decision in this not to have it as a silent film, essentially, not to have any dialogue. Also, apparently, it would have caused a lot of rights issues as well, to use voices and say certain things that are trademarked and all of that sort of thing.
Writing credits,
yeah. So it was decided to, and I think it's almost more powerful for
I think so too.
Having no dialogue, even though the technology is, as I said, there to sort of do that as well if they wanted to. But these films are not about dialogue; they're about visual storytelling. So I found that all very interesting, and to quote a Spock, fascinating, right? So, Pete, that kind of brings us to, was that a beautiful ending, or is it a new beginning? And again, we're talking interpretation here. Obviously, they both turn and stare into the sunset together, holding hands, you know, and does that represent them going into the afterlife together? Or I don't know. Does this mean that this technology, with a de-age or with a not de-age, but with a Shatner, the way they've done this,
with a digitally made up,
does this mean that, I know Chris Pine has kind of said that he's up for this 4th Star Trek movie. Is this a way of getting it that we've got Prime Kirk, post Generations Prime Kirk in the Kelvin timeline, along with that crew? Is this going to lead to something more, or is this the end? Is this the bookend? I don't know. It does get me thinking, because this technology exists now and works. So what does that mean for the future?
I think that is the question, right? I know that my hope would be that this is just a beautiful end, because they did it, and they were successful.
Mm-hmm.
And it was beautiful and moving. And my worry is that, if I'm going to be cynical, then they're going to try to use this to monetize and get more and do more. And that I feel like is a mistake. I think that, one of my complaints, and I think you've, voiced similar concerns, is that New Trek has this bad habit of painting itself into a corner and not exploring new worlds, but just retreading the same spaces that they know were commercially successful, right? Before, and even though they've failed so many times at it, right? Star Trek Into Darkness, they just keep trying to go back. And so, yeah, I do really hope that this is just a nice goodbye. I love the technology and what the technology can do for storytelling, but
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see it applied in new ways. I don't think it should be the driving force of whatever these next chapters are. Right? I think that where Star Trek is being successful is when it tries to tell new stories, and so or can I say it like this, right? Because now that I say that, I'm like, well, there's a lot of the new stories they've told that have not been successful for me. But right. So I apologize. I think I misspoke there, but I will say that what I think makes successful Star Trek is when they are exploring and discovering new things, but are not hampered by the business drives of the entertainment industry, right? And I know that's sort of a hard thing to do.
It is. Yeah, I mean, it is for all the things we say. They've always got studios, networks, shareholders, all of this sort of thing to answer to as well. So when people get on YouTube and they rant about stuff, on one hand, creatively and storytelling wise and all of that sort of thing, and creative decision wise, you can sort of point fingers to a certain extent, but there's always a lot more to it. It's a very complex, nuanced, nuanced thing. I mean, what I will say about this is I think this is what Star Trek does best in terms of what we've seen here is proper science fiction here that actually it raises as many questions as things it answers, and it beautifully answers a lot of stuff, but it does also raise as many questions, I think. And I think it does that both thematically and as a production. I think it kind of it's interesting. It is a lovely farewell to, I would argue, two of screen's most important fictional characters, of film and television in history.
Yeah,
I would say that friendship in these two characters, whether you're a Star Trek fan or not, I think that's undeniable.
Yeah. Well, I think sorry, I want to tangent here briefly and just say that you're 100% right on some of the most important, because I would say that if we just stop people on the street and ask them to say James Kirk's name, 80% of people could say James T. Kirk, right?
Yeah, except for Gary Mitchell, who'd say James R. Kirk, right?
Right. 15% of the population, right? But but yeah, right. And so I feel like that is such a testament, right? That people who don't really know Star Trek know that it's James T. Kirk, right? Or
Yeah.
that they know it's Kirk and Spock.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that one definitely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe that's the way to say it. Right?
They'd say is James Kirk and Dr. Spock or something, maybe.
Yeah, right. But still,
Yeah.
I think that's such a good point. The other thing that you said that I really want to trumpet and say brilliantly said there is this is what science fiction does best, right? It takes real life situations and sort of mulls the questions, proposes new ones, and lets us ruminate and enjoy the emotions.
Yes.
Right. And so that's exactly what this did here. Yeah. So sorry,
Well,
I just wanted to say thank you for saying that. That was
no,
great.
no. That's cool. I mean, this is an absolute labor of love. You can tell this by everybody involved, an absolute labor of love. I mean, this is, again, I always want to shout out our friend now, friend of the channel or whatever, Vic Moniana and the Star Trek Continues team. And obviously, you know, arguably on a much lower budget or whatever, but they put a nice conclusion to the original series and a transition into the motion pictures, right? Which was cleared up loose ends and tied up loose ends and fixed some continuity and was absolutely perfect. I think, you know, like I said, my head canon, Star Trek Continues is absolutely canon, even though that wasn't an official licensed Paramount project. Yeah. But what I'm saying is here it's a different thing. Yeah. But it's the same attention to detail and level of love for Star Trek and for the fans. I think this short film definitely had that, and the sort of, I guess, you know, I'll probably eat my words at some point, but my somewhat bold statement that I said I was going to say at the end, but I do kind of think this is, in my opinion, this, I think it's about 7 minutes of actual screen time by the time you take out, obviously, the quite long end credits.
Extensive
for a lot of
credits.
people, but I think it's 7 minutes or so. But I would argue that this is probably the best 7 minutes of Star Trek that we've had in the last 7 years. You know, I mean, it is a bold statement. It's had its moments. Obviously, Picard season 3 had some wonderful stuff. Strange New World season 1 did, but you know, but there's also been in that time a lot of damage as well. Yeah, a lot of rubbish as well, and even those things. Like I'm sort of repeating myself and harping on here, but I've said that, you know, Picard season 3, good as it was, is kind of slightly degraded by the baggage that came from the first 2 seasons. And even Star Trek Strange New World season 1 was sort of hampered by some of the stuff that had happened in Discovery with those characters, you know, Discovery season 2 or whatever.
And you love Strange New World season 2, right?
I did not.
Yeah.
you and I covered, because this is the annoying thing. We didn't, just because of circumstance, we didn't cover. Oh, I know why it was. It was because season 1, I don't think, was available or something.
Right. It was, I got to watch it, but you didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we couldn't do weekly.
We couldn't do a weekly thing, and then we had to do a sort of recap.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we went into season 2, and I was like dead excited, thinking, yes, we can cover this episode by episode sort of thing. And I mean, generally speaking, again, it had its moments, but generally speaking, season 2 was for me a letdown. And again, if anyone wants to see that, go and watch our previous 10 episodes or whatever where we cover it. But also
where Keith and I go head to head, because I loved it and you did not.
Okay, but I'll be honest, from what I've seen, I'm not psyched about season 3 at all.
I haven't seen anything.
I've seen a trailer and I'm not psyched at all, unfortunately. So and we don't know what's happening with the movies, obviously. at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. I would just it's a bit of a fleeting statement. It's easy for me to say, but I just wish that the official Star Trek showed the love that this has been given. That's all I'm saying.
I think that's really interesting. It's a very interesting statement. My response would be that I kind of disagree.
Okay.
Because one, there's lots of stuff that's come out in the past 7 years that I have really enjoyed on Star Trek side. And I think I could definitely pick 7 minutes from I don't know if I could pick 7 minutes from Picard season 3, but I think Strange New Worlds season 2 has 7 minutes that I find more compelling.
Cool.
I will say that.
Yeah. As I said, mine's a bit of a. This is it now. I've totally blown my opportunity with Secret Hideout now to go and be cast in one of their shows or direct one of their shows.
I will always maintain hope, right?
Of course they watch this, obviously.
Yeah. The other part of that like, right. So my response is, I think there are better stuff. I also think the part that holds this back for me is that I do have this confusion while I'm watching it, right? Which is like, I don't quite understand why they're doing this, right? Like, I appreciate it, but I'm not sure it was necessary. It didn't feel like a needed button for me. And so I was like, okay, actually, here's what I'll say. It did feel like a lot of parts of Picard season 3 where I was like, okay, I understand why you're doing this. I get what you're going for. It's not landing all the way with me, right?
Okay.
It's taking me out of it a little bit. And so, yeah, interesting. I think that a lot of the uncertainty and the like open-ended questions, I get a little, maybe I'm a little gun shy, and I'm like, am I going to get burned by these? Are these just writing loopholes where nobody's really thought it out and they're just throwing stuff in for the sake of throwing it in, and then they're trying to get away with it by making it nebulous or a question, or saying, oh, it doesn't mean anything, you have to figure out what it means, because they haven't figured out what it means, which makes me nervous. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Anyway, we've got to, shoot the breeze about this for over an hour now, which is nice. As I said, I didn't want to speak to you before this. I thought, let's save it to the
100%
stream.
Talk about it. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll put this out. I'll put this live on. I'll drop it on YouTube, and we can drop it as a podcast as well.
Yeah.
But if anybody wants to follow us or get in touch or whatever, you can follow us on LSWOT Cast, and check out some of our other videos and streams on this channel. You can also, if you want to see some of my creative work, I've got some on my other channel, British Isles, EYLES. So there's some of my creative work on there, and you can contact Pete. Is that right? PCM Mealy? Is that still correct? Yeah. Sorry, the slides. I realise that slide's dated 2023, so that's what I didn't update.
No, it's sorry, you transposed letters when you said it, so I'm just going to say it again for the podcast. It's P. Mick Mealy, PMC Mealy. Yeah.
My apologies, but
no, it's all right.
But yeah, so please get in touch or put comments down below if you have any thoughts, or you strongly agree or disagree or whatever. Then it's all comments are relevant. And if you want us to do anything else, please also put that down as well, and we can maybe do another follow-up or live stream or something. But no doubt we will be covering more stuff at some point. It really depends if this gets any audience to the ratio of effort, if you like. But for now,
audience
you
to
got anything to
enthusiasm
finish on,
level.
Pete? Sorry.
I was going to say it's audience to our enthusiasm level about the product.
Exactly that. Exactly that. But thank you for your time, and
thank you for asking me.
Yeah, we'll see you at the next episode of Let's See What's Out There. Bye for now. I realized I used the wrong ending there. It said, see you next week.
That's all right.
All right. And we're out.